Some of the apartment houses forbid knocking on resident doors. After you are elected to the City Council, will you support a bill to require apartment buildings to allow their residents to knock on other residents' doors for political purposes, including getting signatures on petitions?
I would, and the main reason I would is this only encourages more people to participate in their own process. Everyone always has the individual right to sign a petition or not, to answer their door or not, to respond to a neighbor or not when they come knock on their door. It's not only would help people to participate in the system, but it's a community building effort, if you ask me. So especially if it's a resident within that building being allowed to go around and to collect that on behalf of a candidate or an issue or to get a certain item on the ballot. If we continue to allow buildings just to be locked, I think it just locks out people from the process. And it's something that I want to encourage more contact between neighbors, not less. And I think if there are especially bigger buildings that are owned by private landlords or private big landlords who are out there to make a profit, something about that just doesn't feel right for them to dictate the policy for the 100 or so residents that might live in that particular building. I don't think one person should be able to control the amount of information or participation that people could have in their own political process. It just doesn't sit well with me. So I would definitely support something that honors people's privacy, but that also doesn't allow that changes the system that we have now. That to me feels like a couple people are really controlling the access that many residents have if you happen to live in a big apartment building.
In the building where I live, just this past campaign season, I was circulating a petition. I was called into the office, and the implication was that if I tried to circulate a petition, I might get evicted. And now we have the elevator problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to circulate a petition regarding the elevator, but I'm afraid to.
Right. And people shouldn't be afraid to just, again, go knock on their neighbors' doors about something not only in their building, but it's something that might happen to be in the larger community. I think, again, it only detracts from the sense of building community and building connection with your neighbors if there are these imposed rules, if you will, within buildings. And if we are going to develop more concentrated, dense housing, we need to be able to make sure that we don't pull people out of the process because we're putting people into housing that's more dense, if you will. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And again, people have always the individual option to sign a petition or not. You have that option right now when you walk down Church Street, and if you're asked at someone's tabling if you want to sign a petition or not. So to me, I think it makes a lot of sense and only, again, builds more participation in the process.
What can you do to make the city safer for bicycles?
Well, I'm a biker myself, and the thing about Ward 2 is a lot of people walk and bike out of Ward 2 downtown or to their jobs somewhere in the city. So this is certainly something that always needs to be on the minds of the city as we pave streets, but also think about how to remap certain streets. I know when they did that on North Winooski, that was a huge help because North Winooski is a main corridor coming out of Ward 2 to make that bike lane for folks to have that safety. But it's definitely a two-way street, no pun intended, but in terms of being able to make sure that also drivers, people who are operating cars are aware of the bike rules and bikers in the streets, but that bikers also are using hand gestures and other ways to indicate when they're going in traffic about where they're turning or where they're not turning. And so I think there needs to be some education, some reminders, if you will, about proper bike safety that people need to have when they're in the streets, but also for cars to make sure that they are mindful of the fact that Burlington's a very big bike city and there's a lot of pedestrians, and to keep everyone safe, both sides need to do their roles in terms of being safe. But I think efforts that Local Motion have done, which is one of the local organizations that works on biker and pedestrian safety, have been really great in terms of increasing people's awareness around safety in the streets and making sure that we're building more access, more bike lanes when there are bigger, newer roads that are being put in. and making sure that bikers also know the rules around biking on sidewalks versus not biking on sidewalks. So I think there's more that can be done, because as we continue to look at energy issues and more people not having cars, we're going to be using more bikes and walking more. So Burlington needs to constantly be creative in how it's responding and making sure people stay safe.
I've noticed that Winooski Avenue in the area around City Market is an especially difficult area. I wouldn't want to be riding a bicycle there.
Yeah.
But even walking across the street, when I stand on the edge of the sidewalk waiting for the walk signal, sometimes the cars will go by, I think, 50 miles an hour. And I wonder if there isn't some way to slow them down a little bit.
You know, crossing the streets in even more areas is definitely a little scary, and also just looking at speed. And I think Burlington has done some smart stuff in the Old North End with speed bumps and making sure that other calming techniques for traffic. But I think there's also ways that we can be better about making clear certain crossing zones alone. Like I've stood, when I used to work at the Peace and Justice Center and I'd walk to work, crossing Pearl Street from either Elmwood or right at the head of Church Street was sometimes an impossible task. Like people would never stop for you. So there are not only ways I think we can do more signage perhaps, but we can also on some of the more dangerous intersections. When I went to school in Northampton, they actually built a couple of crossing lanes that lit up. So there was lights that flashed within the pavement itself, because there were some places where so much foot traffic happened, but there was so much traffic going on that for real safety reasons, the college finally installed kind of these lit up crossing zones. So I think there are probably a couple areas in Burlington that are so dangerous for pedestrians that might warrant looking into some creative ways to really bring attention to the fact that there's a crossing lane there and that people should be able to cross without fear of getting hit. And North Winooski, that's a really busy street, and the City Market, taking even bikers and pedestrians out of it, the traffic flow going into City Market is just really often a log jam. And so I think, looking at how we can look at that street as a whole and looking at all the factors, not only biking and pedestrian safety, but also just car safety and traffic is really something that needs to happen. Because as City Market continues to be used, it's a big draw, and a lot of people drive, and how can we maybe look at getting people to City Market without the excessive amount of cars that are often there. I mean, just sometimes even finding parking there is really difficult. So maybe there's some other creative ways we can look at how to get people there without the car factor.
I like the tunnel that UVM has going underneath Route 2. It makes it so easy to go from the Davis building over to the south end of the campus. I wonder if we couldn't, would it be too expensive to put tunnels under some of the main roads like Winooski in Burlington?
I'd have to look into it a little bit more. I mean, assuming that we don't turn it into a big dig like Boston, I assume that there's got to be some more affordable ways to do that. But we have a lot of really creative people in Burlington who are engineers and other creative kind of urban design firms and companies. So I think if we tap into some of that creativity that exists in our Burlington residents, we could come up with a solution that could, just be a creative way of solving the problem. We just have to ask. We have to invite people to be part of their own process. So
that might be a way to put people to work and use some of the stimulus money coming from the Obama administration.
Exactly. In multiple ways: design, build, and implement.